Hi everyone, Cami and Eisenzimmer here with the Carbon Arms promotional shooting team. I use the Carbon Arms twin loading system, and for optimum loading performance, slight modifications are needed to your loading port and forearm of most competition shotguns. I'm going to be taking you through the process using my JM930 Pro. I'm not a master gunsmith. Heck, this will be the first real attempt at modifying my competition firearms. But thanks to the advice and encouragement of my teammates at Carbon Arms, I'm confident enough to make these modifications myself. So, without further ado, let's get started. Before you begin, you're going to need to find a suitable work area, one that has sufficient lighting, a large enough workspace, and a vise to hold the equipment you'll be working on. Next, you're going to need the right tools. Based on advice from my teammates, I've assembled the following tools. A various assortment of files. I have a round one, a tapered one, a flat one. These will be used for minute touches and finishing when we get towards the end. I have a metal finishing pad which is used to sand out and make it look pretty. I have my dremel and my grinding and sanding attachments that go with it. And lastly, I have electrical tape, and my electrical tape will be used to mark off the limits of where I will actually be doing the cutting on the opening port and the forearm. Before you make modifications to any firearm, you always want to make sure that your firearm is unloaded. We have made sure this was unloaded, as you can see here. The first modification we'll be making to this firearm is we're going to be removing the forearm and trimming up the end here. And this is going to be so that way when we load in, we don't hit our thumb here and can slide up easily. So what I'm going to do first, while the forearm is still on the gun, is I'm going to mark out the area kind of along the sides here where I think that I'm going to need to shave down this area. So all I'm going to do is take a pencil, slowly mark out the area, going on both sides, kind of step back, look to make sure everything's good. Now this is going to be the area where I'm going to end up taking it off and kind of angling it down towards, I don't just want to make it a straight drop, I want to actually angle it down. So I've removed the forearm from the firearm. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to end up taping off where I've marked with a pencil. This is to keep me from being too aggressive with either the Dremel or the file. It's going to be my marking line along the way. So all I'm going to do is take some electrical tape and just mark off where I'm going to end up having to file or Dremel off. You can see here where I've taped off the area where I made my initial mark with my pencil. What I'm going to do next is take a flat file. I'm going to shave it down into an angle. I decided not to go with the Dremel since this is my first time and that may be a little too aggressive. So all you're going to do, nice even strokes all the way down until you get it to the angle that you want it at. So after about 10 minutes of using a file, you can see I've gotten pretty much absolutely nowhere. So, against my better judgment, we are going to try using a Dremel. So we'll see how this works out. As you can see, after about 2 minutes, I've got a pretty good finish here going. I've looked at it a couple of times up against my shotgun. Still not quite as angular as I'd like it, so I'm going to take it down a little bit more, but definitely using the Dremel over the file is the way to go. As you can see, man, this is coming along pretty good. So I think I've got it just about where I'd like it now. So now I'm just going to take some fine grit sandpaper here and just rub it out. Get rid of all the indentations that the Dremel has made in it. Make it nice and smooth just the way it was as it came out of the factory. So I'm just finishing up here, doing the last little bit of sanding and polishing. Feels pretty good, looks pretty good. Now the real test. Bring it up here, slide it on my shotgun. Now I load strong hand, so I load like this, load 2, nice smooth. I don't have that big hump anymore, that big rough, nice and easy, exactly the way I wanted it. Again, Dremel is the way to go, even for somebody who'd never used a Dremel before. First modification, nice and good. I'm liking the way this is going to feel. Now that we've finished the forearm, we're going to move on to the real challenge here. And that's going to be taking down the sides of the loading port and opening the front up to make it easier for twin or quad loading should I decide to try that. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to mask off the sides just like we did on the forearm. I'm going to mask where the trigger unit is. I'm going to come down on the sides. I'll probably, if you can see right up along here, the edge, it's kind of where I'm going to go to. It's going to be beveled in here. I do have to be careful of the pin here so that way that doesn't fall out. And coming up onto the top. So right now I'm just going to mark it off again with the electrical tape. I've taped off both the trigger guard where I want it up on the top to open up the loading port. I did the same thing I did on the forearm. I marked it off with a pencil first, then used black electrical tape. I also put it along the sides here. I do have to be careful of the retaining pin in here. We don't want to cut down too low, because once you do that, you've just created an anchor for your new boat. So first thing I'm going to do, just like I started with the forearm, I'm going to start with some files, see how I feel about that. Feel a little bit aggressive, I may go after the Dremel, then again, maybe not. So all I'm doing is just taking a file, slowly going back and forth, making sure I have that beveled edge. Some of the things you need to look out for is you don't want it straight across, you do want it beveled, and you do want it kind of rounded. Right now I have it straight across the top. That's one of the things that I'm working on, is slowly trying to get that edge rounded like it had been before. The other thing you do have to worry about that I found out is the corners, which is why I do have my rounded file. You get in there, make sure that you're getting your corners rounded back off nice and even, just the way they were. I'll continue this for a little bit. When we come back, I'll show you how I've done on the sides. As you can see, the filing didn't go very well again. I spent quite a bit of time on it, didn't get very far. So I went back to the trusty Dremel, which I swore I'd never use. But it's actually going pretty good. I've opened up the loading port, I've smoothed out my edges along the side, kind of rounded off the edges. I'm still thinking I'm going to need to take a little bit off the top. I'm not sure yet. We're going to wait on that. So the next process I'm going to do is trying to straighten out the edges and open up this side. So we're going to go ahead and give that a start. Hopefully this doesn't become a $700 paperweight. So I've stopped increasing the opening at the loading port here towards the front, and I've started to round off the side of the edge here. It's actually coming along pretty good, fairly smooth. I'm liking it. I can actually see here where it's increased the amount of the loading port. So for being pretty much petrified of doing this, it's turning out a lot better than I thought and a lot easier. So now I'm going to have to come on this side again. If you zoom in here and look, you'll actually see where the pin is. I have to be very careful not to go too far into the pin, or again, everything's going to be for naught. So we'll continue working and see what happens next. So all I'm doing right now is just polishing up the edges. I've done both sides. I've opened it up. I have a nice little curve here. If you can zoom in down here, you can actually see from the side that it has a nice little beveled angle to it. I've opened up both of the sides of the loading port. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to unwrap everything, put it back together, check out, see how it works. As you can see, I've reassembled my entire JM930. If you look at the loading port here, I was able to bevel it off. You can just barely see the retainer here. I've also beveled off the fore end. The loading gate I do have welded, so that goes in. Everything appears to be working. True test, will it take load 2? Right, so we have it up, we turn it over, load 2, just like that. No more ghost load, worked perfectly. So, if somebody like me who has absolutely no gunsmithing experience can do this with a Dremel and a file, so can you. Don't be afraid, just go after it, nice and slow. I'd like to thank Carbon Arms, my teammates at Carbon Arms, for giving me the advice and encouragement to go ahead and do this to my shotgun. Look forward to seeing you on the range.